I was a D student in high school, and I scored bottom 30% of all intelligence tests. But how did I end up achieving top 10% of medicine, scoring top 0.1% of all students? Now in this video, I'll give you absolutely everything you need to know, so you can go from a failing or average student, or a burnt out A student, to a happy and perfectly balanced A student without wasting 15 years of your life like me finally working this out. Now you can study less and get better grades and have all the free time to do whatever you like without feeling guilty. But the thing is, you need to understand every single point that I'm about to share with you. The most important points are 7, 8 and 9, but you need 1 to 6 as a foundation to make 9 to work. Now if you actually go and apply everything I'm about to share with you, this might just be the last study video that you'll ever need to watch. Phase 1, unhappy D student. Now since I was young, my biggest dream was getting into medicine, but I was convinced that I wasn't good enough. I felt like this poor peasant looking up at these rich gods and begging them to drag me out of this mess. Now I genuinely thought that I don't deserve to be a doctor. It's not that I didn't try, I did. I tried studying day in and day out, but I was still getting C's and D's on my report card. And I honestly believe no matter how hard I try, I'll never be as good as my sister who always gets straight A's. And I thought I was genuinely stupid. I thought I just wasn't born for studying. Now, eventually I gave up. I went the completely opposite way. I spent time enjoying the moment instead. I spent thousands and thousands of hours playing computer games. I was supplying myself with this short-lived dopamine to escape the harsh reality. The reality that I'll never be good enough. Now the pressing thing was, high school was ending soon for me. If I didn't quickly figure out something to turn this around, I'll never make my family proud. I won't amount to anything in life, and I will be a failure forever. So how did I go from being a failing student to getting into med school with a bunch of extremely smart people and still manage to rank the top 10%? Now the answer, it's all about systems. Now, when I was a D student, I had a D student system, hating life. When I was an A student in pharmacy school, achieving top 10%, no social life, no sleep, and on the verge of burnout, I had a burnout A student system that was hating life. Now when I was an A student in medical school, achieving top 10%, sleeping 8 hours each day, picking up heaps of hobbies, and started an online business to help thousands of other students with their exams, I had a happy A student system that is loving life. Now next, I'll give you all the elements of these systems and how these evolved so you can be that happy A student that is loving life. So if you're in high school and university, you can study less, get better grades, and have all the free time to do what you like without feeling guilty. Now if you are a working professional, you can regain your perfect study life balance, have less stress, more sleep, and spend more time with your loved ones. And no, this isn't another video about 10 study techniques that changed my life. 15 years ago, there wasn't all these smart YouTubers on the internet sharing everything. Now back in the days, no one taught active recall technique, spaced repetition, cognitive load theory, and all these fancy learning theories. Now to be honest with you, I'm not a study guru, I'm not a learning expert. I've just been through the trenches and had to work out the hard way after 15 years of hitting brick walls. Now I even have a high school picture of myself to remind me how badly I wanted all of this information I'm about to share with you. I want to save you time. I want you to succeed, because if anyone is deserving to succeed, it is you, because you've dedicated time today to improve yourself. So I'm not going to hold back or sugarcoat anything, and I'm telling you, none of these study techniques matters, and all of these techniques are only small parts of the whole system. Now once you think in systems, all your problems suddenly go away. You'll finally stop procrastinating. You will have unlimited study motivation. Now each of these systems, from a D student unhappy system to an efficient happy A student, are all made up of simple underlying principles. And I'll go through the 9 core principles that transform myself from the D student to the efficient happy A student, and it will be increasingly more important towards the end. And I won't recommend you to skip ahead, because you need all the earlier principles to work with the later principles to all work together. These are all the parts of the whole system, and you can't miss any part. A lot of lessons were learned when I was a D student, and this was the first principle. Now, principle 1, all systems are made of your mindset, methods, and action. And when I was a D student, I had a D student system. I'd have a level 1 mindset. I blamed the teachers for teaching poorly and setting tricky exam questions. I blamed my family for being so noisy I can't focus and study. I blamed everyone but myself for my own failures. When I'm busy blaming everyone else, I give all my power away and I don't look for ways to improve. I had also level 1 methods. I had no idea how to study. I'll just stare at the textbook and hope this information would jump inside my brain. I always had that fantasy I could just transplant my teacher's brain into mine temporarily to just sit the exams. Now, my study methods were so poor that there was one time in high school, it was a mock exam. I was sick, so I took the exam 1 week later. Someone gave me all the exam answers, and I still managed to get 30% of the exam wrong. That is how hopeless I was. I also had level 1 action, so I had no desire to do anything. I tried a period of studying 10 hours a day straight using these level 1 methods, and I'll still get C's and D's, the same results again. I thought I was genuinely stupid, so I stopped trying. I stopped taking action because I had no desire, which leads on to principle 2. Principle 2, desire dictates everything. Now, back in high school, all these smart people are all in one class called the A class, and all the rest of us would be in the mainstream class. Now, in the final year of high school, I was lucky enough to spend more time with these A class students. Everyone was so driven, everyone knew what they wanted in life. A lot of them wanted what I wanted, which was getting into medicine. I desperately wanted to be accepted within my new friend group, so my desire completely changed. If I continued to be a D student, I'd lose this group of amazing, driven friends. I knew I wasn't the smartest, so I had to work the hardest. I needed to be a freaking fast running pig to even catch up with their pace. I need to run 10 steps with my short stubby legs to catch up with their 1 step. And after hanging out with these A students long enough, I figured that they had something in common. Now this leads to principle 3. Principle 3 is beginning with the end in mind. End meaning the goal, so having a goal in mind. So let me explain. I used to study quite randomly. I would take all the teacher's lessons as gospel. So I copy all of this all in one page and keep writing until my brain was beaten to submission. My brain was then loosely hold on to this information for about a day. Then I forget everything else the next day. There was also a deeper problem. There were many teachers that I didn't understand what they were teaching. Their teaching style just didn't fit my learning style. But when I observed what the A students were doing, it all made sense. All the national exams have an exam board, which sets out a syllabus of everything you need to know. This syllabus is then made of very specific learning objectives. Now, all the teachers from all different schools teach from the syllabus. They can then only test you within the syllabus. So I started making my own notes and tried to understand the syllabus learning objectives. I even picked up some topics that my teacher forgot to teach us. And instead of blaming the teachers that they aren't teaching well, I took more responsibility to learn everything myself. And at that point, I still didn't know how to study, but my method score went up a little bit knowing the syllabus hack. My action score also went up because I desired to fit in and not be left behind. Now, I managed to be a straight B student by the end of final year high school. I still didn't get into medicine because of my relatively poor grades, and I scored poorly in the medicine intelligence test. But my mindset changed after hanging out with these A students. I knew that if I kept it long enough, I would eventually get in as a postgraduate. It will also test my determination whether I truly love medicine, which then links back to desire. With some luck in my application and interviews, I was thrilled to get into pharmacy because this will be a great degree to help me become a better doctor in the future. Now, linking back to principle 1, my mindset improved. I started to take more responsibility. I proactively tried to determine who was giving me my marks, just like high school. In university, things was a little bit different because it's often your lecturer that sets the question, and it is then an art to attend all of these lectures and figure out what they really cared about and would test you about. Now, some of them were kind enough to give you hints if you attended the lecture. And the biggest hack I found was the third door. Now, life, business, success, it's just like a nightclub. There's always 3 ways in. Now, there's third door, the main entrance where the line curves around the block, where 99% of people wait around hoping to get in. And then there is the second door, the VIP entrance, where the billionaires, celebrities, and the people born into it slip through. But what no one tells you is that there's always the third door. It's the entrance where you have to jump out of line, run down an alley, bang on a door 100 times, crack open a window, and sneak through the kitchen. There's always a way. Now, the third door in university is when you go up to your lecturer and ask them questions and clarify what you didn't understand each lecture. They often give you pointers to tell you what you should be focusing on, which often comes up in exams. Now, you should listen carefully to them because they are the ones setting the question and they are the ones giving you marks in the end. Now, in the age of online lectures, it might be frequent email communication or keep on clarifying things you don't understand and attend those office hours if possible. Now, these leads on to phase 2, the unhappy, burnt out A student. So my study methods are still poor. I'm still using level 1 methods to address the 10x amount of content in pharmacy compared to high school subjects. Now, the only logical way I thought was to put in more effort. So from studying 8 hours per day in high school, I ramped this up to 16 hours per day. Basically, I had no life but just studying. My desire to get into into medicine was so great that I sacrificed everything else. I had no sleep, I had no social life, I studied so much that of the university, I only knew where the classes were and where the library was, and I didn't know anything beyond that. Now, according to my well-balanced, high-achieving sister, normal people knew where the good restaurants are to relax. Normal people knew where the best clubs are for the weekend. Now me, on the other hand, I immediately get lost when I'm too far from the library, which leads on to principle 4 I learned, which is the importance of identity. Now, many people ask, how do you beat procrastination? Is it the 2-minute rule? Is it throwing your phone away? Is it time blocking on your calendar? Why does it work for a bit and then stops working again? Why do you promise yourself to do this tomorrow because you've written off today already, but you still procrastinate tomorrow? Now, why is this loop so freaking frustrating? Now, the solution is simple, but not easy. I believe procrastination only happens when you're not clear on what you want. Now, even if you're clear on what you want, your why is insanely big, but you're still unsure how to get there, you will still procrastinate. So you go on this loop of fear of failure, inaction, failure, and more inaction. This is why so many people keep procrastinating. So basically, beating procrastination boils down to 4 things. It's like driving a car. There are 2 gas go pedal factors that make you more likely to do work, which is importance and urgency. Now, there are 2 brake pedal factors that make you less likely to do work, which is fear and uncertainty. Let me use the procrastination tool to help you understand these 4 factors better. Pay attention to the action score on the bottom right corner as we improve the go factors, which is importance and urgency, and reduce the brake factors, which is fear and uncertainty. The action score in the red means that you are very likely to procrastinate. The action score in the orange means you are less likely to procrastinate. The action score in the green means that you are likely to finally take action. Now, desire overrides all of these factors. It gives you enough importance to give up absolutely everything. I will then self-impose urgency to get assignments done 1 week earlier because my identity is tied up to my grades. I also won't have fear because I'm too busy doing the next steps. I also won't allow uncertainty to stop me because I will find out how to finish that assignment or learn that concept or tackle that exam, doing everything that I need to do to work that out. Now, procrastination was a rare thing when I was studying pharmacy because my desire to get into medicine was so big. And once I started getting A grades, I was then known to get good grades. My pride was then tied to this. I don't hope or dream to be an A student. I was that A student. That was my identity. Like James Clear famously wrote in his Atomic Habits book, the key to building lasting habits is focusing on creating a new identity first. Your current behaviors are simply a reflection of your current identity. What you do now is a mirror image of the type of person you believe that you are. To change your behavior for good, you need to start believing new things about yourself. Now, everyone in the Olympics have the same goal, which is getting the gold medal, but only one person ever gets it. Too many people set an external goal and hope for the best. I want to lose 20 kgs, I want to get A's, I want to get into medicine. But why does the only top 1% get into medicine? What is the difference? So the answer again is simple. Their identity is different. Now, the reason why I was the A student isn't because I wanted to be the A student. I needed to be the A student. It was my identity. Now, my systems and the things I prioritized were different, and the things I'm willing to sacrifice was different than my old D student self. But here's a problem with the chicken or the egg. Your identity is so deeply ingrained and it's hard to change. Now, having a D student identity makes it hard to adopt A student habits and systems. But without adopting these A student habits and systems, you don't develop this A student identity. As James Clear says, to change your current behavior for good, you need to start believing new things about yourself. But if you told my old D student self to just believe in yourself, or just be the A student, or start affirmations that you are the A student, I probably would have punched you in the face. But don't worry, when we get to principle 8 and 9, and now I reveal to you there's a bonus principle 10, everything will come together and you will know exactly what you need to do to change your identity. And on to principle 5, we don't live according to our highest dreams, we live according to our lowest standard and systems. Now, once I was an A student, it became my lowest standard. It was all I cared about at this point. It was my identity, and I'd do anything to fight and defend my identity. Now, at that time, I perceived that my pride and my reputation was all tied against my A student identity. And if I lost this identity, I would lose everything. If it took 16 hours of study, I'll just do it. And I'll give you a memorable example of how this principle plays out in life. Now, most people want their toilet to be reasonably clean, right? But in reality, everyone just falls to their lowest standards. If you have taken a dump in the toilet, you'd flush it. And it's not because you care about the toilet being clean as your dreams, but it's because most people won't tolerate themselves to take a dump on top of another unflushed dump. The question you want to ask yourself is, how can you make A's your lowest standards? Which links back to everything we've talked about your mindsets, your method, your desires, and your identity. It also links to our sixth principle. Now, principle 6, accountability. There are two main forms of accountability, and most people don't use any of these. That's why they keep procrastinating. But if you really go and commit these two forms of accountability I'm about to talk to you, you will go and take action. Now, first is external accountability. I was often proud to announce to my friends and family that I got A's, and they expected me to get A's. In a way, I've announced externally that I'm an A student. Now everyone is keeping me accountable. So next time when my friends tell me to hang out or do I choose study, I think really hard about what others will think of me if my grades slip. Now, one other great way to build an external accountability is what I call the $100 challenge. Now, give a family member or someone you look up to this $100 or amount that hurts you if you lose it. Now, tell them the task you will complete and when you will finish this. If you don't complete this in time, they will get to keep the money. So linking back to the 4 factors of procrastination, your importancy and urgency score now shoots up, because it's not just about completing the assignment, it's about your pride. You don't want to disappoint that person you look up to. You don't want to lose that saved up amount because you'll lose out on your favorite gadget, holiday, or experience. This then gives you motivation to overcome any fear and uncertainty of the task, because you'll do everything that's required to figure out how to complete it. But external accountability is not the 80-20 of accountability. Internal accountability is. So internal accountability is the ultimate hack in life. It's like accountability to who you are deeply. Your mindset, your desires, your identity, and your lower standards all come into play. So when I was in pharmacy school, I was that A student. My desire to get into medicine was so great that I sacrificed everything else. I hurt my girlfriend at the time, who was also studying pharmacy with me. Now, all the time we spent together was really just studying. Now, I loved her very much. I wanted to spend more time with her doing fun things and creating memories, but I always delayed this. Now, I told myself, this can wait. I thought I always could make this up once I get good grades, once I get good enough to get into medicine. And after a grueling 3.5 years, I finally got enough grades and got accepted into medicine. It was like the heaviest weight that has finally lifted off from my chest. I could finally breathe. For once, I felt free. For once, I might just be able to make my family proud. And for once, I felt I might just be enough. But no, this wasn't all rainbows and unicorns. This was also, ironically, the worst point in my life. My girlfriend decided to break up with me. She was considerate enough to break up with me after I got accepted into medicine because she didn't want to affect my performance in exams. I told her I wanted to make up everything now. We can do all the fun things now. But all the neglect by me has caused the relationship to end. I even neglected her mental health. She showed signs of depression and wanted to debrief with me, but I kept saying, hey, we're just all going through the same stresses and workload. Why can't we just keep working through this and keep going? Now, looking back, it's the absolute worst thing I could say to someone who is going through depression. And all of this neglect and poor care for her is like sunbathing in the sun without sunblock and then slowly causing skin cancer. The damage is done and it can't be repaired. The only way is to cut it out. And that's exactly what she did to me. She cut me out. Now, getting into medicine is the best moment of my life, and at the same time, it was the worst because I lost someone I deeply cared about. It's like my 2 parallel universes of happiness and sadness just all mashed up together. Naval Ravikant once said, desire is a contract that you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. So once I got together with my girlfriend with huge desire, my new desire to get into medicine then surpassed my desire to continue to stay with her. And that was the painful price I paid to continue my journey. And that explains why my grades immediately slipped to B's. I had no desire to be that A student anymore. I knew I would forget all the technical stuff I learned in these lectures, and B's is all I need to keep my med school entrance. So that became my lower standards. So after I lost my girlfriend, I fell into deep depression. I even had thoughts to take my own life. It was truly a low point in my life. And luckily, I had a good group of friends and family around me that supported me through this. And slowly but surely, I recovered emotionally before med school started. Now, this is where I learned some of the most important principles of my life, which brings to phase 3, happy and efficient A student. And on to principle 7, which is leverage. Now, leverage is the secret of all the successful people in the world, and it's most commonly thrown around when used in investing. Basically, it's a fancy way of saying how you can create a system that, instead of putting 1x effort in and getting 1x output, how do you put in 1x effort and get 10x or even 100x output? So in study terms, meaning that you can study for 1 hour and your friend next to you needs to study 4 days straight without eating or sleeping just to catch up with you. Now, everything we talked about so far feeds into this principle of leverage. Now, having great desire gives you unlimited internal motivation and drive to do work. You won't waste time to be distracted, so your efficiency is higher. So every hour you put in gives more output. Greater leverage. Now, if you felt the video has been helpful so far, the real 80-20 of this video is the next principle, which is principle 8, the grades equation. But before we move on to principle 8, I want to talk to you arguably one of the most important mind-setting principles called the overarching law. The reason why it's so important is that I'm still using it until today, allowing me to work full-time as a doctor, spend heaps of quality time with my little one, help thousands of students around the world, all while building an 8-figure million-dollar property portfolio. I'm saying this not to impress you, but to express to you what is possible if you apply this overarching law well. Overarching simply means it applies to absolutely everything. Now, first, you have to look at your current situation. Now, let's take an example that you want to cook a tasty chicken. Now, your current situation is a raw chicken. Your desired result is a beautifully tender cooked chicken. And the only thing you can apply to this current situation of a raw chicken is a proposed action in the middle. So the first time you cook it for 15 minutes in the oven, you get a result, which is an undercooked chicken. Then you get gastro after eating it. Now next, you want to try something else. Your current situation is still the raw chicken, a new one. Now this time, your proposed action is cooking it for 10 hours. This chicken then catches on fire and you've burnt your house down. You then keep altering your proposed action until you get your tender cooked chicken. Now this applies to every single area of your life. If you're unhappy about your current situation, it could be poor grades, or you could be constantly struggling for money or your finances, you can simply decide to change and take different actions. You are not a tree. You can move and you can change your behaviors. Now, it sounds simple and you might think this is so obvious, right? But when we're too tired going autopilot about our day-to-day, we don't stop and think how to choose better actions. Just like when I was a D student, my proposed method was to study 10 hours a day using inefficient methods, and the result I got was C's and D's. And the conclusion I got from this experiment was that I was stupid. I wasn't born for studying. The system is rigged for smart students, and I should stop trying. Now, once we break it down like this, it sounds so simple, it sounds so obvious that I shouldn't just stop there. And that's why I keep saying that mindset is arguably even more important than a specific study technique that you're learning on YouTube. Now, without a strong mindset, it's often hard to keep trying after you hit a brick wall. Now, if you're not good at studying, it basically just means that your current efforts aren't working. You simply need to change it. And there's no external force that's stopping you from succeeding. You also need to realize there is also no one here to save you. You are the one that needs to decide that you've had enough of your current situation. You need to have the desire to change and choose a different action so you move towards a different trajectory. Just like my D student self, no one could force me to take action except myself. Which leads on to the next principle. I'll now give you everything you need to help you apply to your current situation so you can get ahead of 99% of students effortlessly. So listen carefully to principle 8, which is grades equation. So the grades equation is probably one of the highest leverage things you can learn when it comes to studying. Now, once I understood this principle, I went from a burnt out A student in pharmacy, having no sleep, destroying my relationships, destroying my social life, to a well-balanced A student in medicine, having heaps of free time, picking out new hobbies, and have time to help others along the way. And the math doesn't work out logically if I continued what I did previously. My pharmacy school was about 10x the workload of high school, so I had to go from 8 hours of study to 16 hours of study. And med school was about 10x the workload of pharmacy school. So theoretically, I needed to at least double my hours of study, which is impossible. Even if I don't sleep, don't eat, don't pee, I don't have 32 hours in a day. And the true turning point was when I was in medical school. I was fortunate to be with an extremely smart group of friends. This, yet again, completely changed my view on studying. Everyone in that group consistently achieved top 10%, and one eventually turned out to be the top in class. But the catch is that they didn't achieve it with no life. Everyone prided themselves on being balanced while being effective. This is where everything changed. I learned that every single study problem that I had basically was solved with this grades equation. And a grades equation is comprised of 3 main parts that really allows you to unearth every inefficiency that's keeping you from your maximum potential. Now, first is time efficiency. And there can be 3 scenarios that you can be inefficient with your time. Now, number one is insufficient time, where you simply aren't putting enough time in. Like when I was a D student, I gave up trying, so I remained a D student. And once I had a desire to fit into the A class students, I ramped up my study time and eventually got Bs. Now, number two is putting a heap of time, but you're not studying effectively. If you're studying 10 hours a day, half the time you're distracted or on your phone. You're wasting 5 hours of your time each day. Yes, you have a lot of what I call bums on seats time, but not much effective studying time. So theoretically, you can be studying for 5 hours, then go home, take a nap, and play some games for 5 hours. The result would still be the same. Now that's exactly what I said to my student Toby, and I helped cut down more than half of his study time while improving his grades. You don't just want bums on seats time, you want effective studying time, which leads to number three, that you're putting in adequate time studying, effective 3 to 5 hours each day, very focused, but still getting bad grades. Then that relates to the next part, which is study efficiency. Now study efficiency. Now this is where most of YouTube talks about, the subset of everything you really need. This is where active recall, spaced repetition, cognitive load theory, and all these learning theories come in. Yes, it makes some difference, but you also need other principles of the study system to all work together. You can have the best study methods, but if you keep procrastinating, or if you don't have the desire or accountability to continue, you will still get bad results. Now, I genuinely don't believe you need all these fancy learning theories to be successful at studying, because I never needed them when I was in medical school achieving top 10%. There was really only one thing which I was focused on, which was active study. So I kept on creating ways that I can actively study, which I call the 3D active learning system. Now there are specific things that I do before the semester, during the semester, which is before classes, during classes, and after classes. So before the semester, before you can even start to learn everything, you need to know what you need to know. It's like hopping into a car. You need to input in the GPS on where you want to go, otherwise you just drive at random places. So which links to principle 3, having the end or the goal in mind. But before the semester, I would have already scoped out my subjects, building on top of what I learned from the A student in high school. I build what I call a knowledge-based timetable. Now there's a reason for this. Let me give you an analogy to help you understand this. Now for a particular subject or topic, there will be certain specific objectives or knowledge that you need to cover. Now first time you remember it, it's like building a solid brick wall in your memory. In the ideal world, you should learn lecture 1, then this should build a solid brick wall. Then onto lecture 2, another solid brick wall, and so on until lecture 10. You then walk into the exams, then you can easily recall everything and achieve 100%. Now, as students, we all know that this isn't the case. There's just this one tiny flaw that changes the whole logic. Our memory decays over time. Now day 1, we learn lecture 1. It might be a solid wall. Then on day 2, we learn about lecture 2, but we've forgotten a little bit about lecture 1. Hence, the wall has decayed a little bit. Then day 3 comes and you don't fully understand this topic, so it's a moderate wall to begin with. Then day 4, you might understand the topic very well and it remains a very solid wall until day 10. And this cycle goes on and the bricks on the wall keeps decaying if you don't come back to review it. And the problem with most students, including myself back in school, is that I studied chronologically, meaning from lecture 1 through to lecture 10. Again, this feels like we're covering all bases, but when I reach these big holes in the wall, I don't spend enough time covering them because I allocate maybe just 1 hour to study this. Then when I reach these solid walls, I know them so well that I don't really need that much time to maintain this wall. Effectively, that hour I spent on that was just wasted time. So the idea is to go back to these leaky areas and fix these. So the actionable point would be to adopt what I call a knowledge-based timetable, where you focus your time on your objectively weaker subjects rather than going through topics in order. Now, this is covered really well by Ali Abdaal, the study productivity guru himself, and he calls it the retrospective timetable. I was very surprised that someone was using the same method as me when I was going through YouTube. Now, this analogy explains why this knowledge timetable works well. Well, we go back to these leaky walls instead of spending time on the things we already know well. Now, this applies leverage to make sure every single hour you spend studying gives the greatest results. Now for before the lecture, I'd already have glanced at the lecture slides. I would then start to form questions on the lecture. What do I already know? What are the concepts I need to pay attention to learn even more? Can I look up some of these concepts already and try to learn these and understand this? It's a principle of active learning that matters because I'm already trying to find connections with my existing knowledge and priming myself to pay attention to specific things during the lecture. And most importantly, I constantly ask, how can I apply this when I actually become a doctor a few years later and a patient has this problem? Everyone's looking to me for a good decision, and a patient might die if I make a wrong decision, or if I don't understand this concept well? Now this links back to the principle of desire. This really hits home and gives me reason to learn things really well. And during the lecture, I generally make zero notes in lectures. I would listen carefully to potential talking points that can answer the questions I wrote down before the lecture. So during these lecture breaks, I'll then apply this third door principle I mentioned earlier and immediately try to clarify concepts with the lecturer so I understand all of these concepts. Instead of studying a concept 10 times, I get to learn it and remember it indefinitely on the spot. Again, relating to leverage, putting in 1x effort to get 100x results. So I use the Feynman technique to explain to the lecturer exactly what I think I know and what I don't get about this concept. Now this massively helps because they're the expert and they would correct things that I thought was initially correct, but I had a flaw in my logic. These then create great neural connections. So when I don't understand something, I don't just pretend that I know so I don't look stupid. I keep clarifying and explaining in my own words until the lecturer confirms I got the concept that I initially was confused about. Now this way, I don't really need to study this anymore because once I can explain this without using any resources, the knowledge is mine and it will stay until the exam time comes and beyond. So after the lecture, this is where true consolidation comes in. Here's a few things that helps greatly. Now you first need to understand the difference between concepts versus facts. These require very different learning methods. Now by concepts, I mean things that you can understand and explain. Like the food that you eat are broken down into smaller building blocks so your body can make useful things that it needs to survive. And by facts, I mean that things you just need to know. Like in most prescription pills, there's only about 1% of active drug, and there's all 99% of other things are called fillers. And there is this filler name called magnesium stearate. There is really not much more meaningful understanding you can do for the name magnesium stearate. You really just need to learn the word magnesium stearate. These are facts. Now the way you learn concepts and how you learn facts uses completely different methods. 80-20 I focused on was learning the concepts well, then the facts can fill in later, closer to exams. Now even if I don't have these specific examples to give, I have this solid concept foundations that I can answer most questions well in exams while doing minimal studying. So for facts, I use the HILE method, which has helped thousands of students improve their memory by 10 to 100 times. So if you're keen to learn this, comment HILE method below so I know to make a video for you specifically about this. And on to the 5-10-15 rule. Every concept I learn must pass this 5-10-15 rule. Can I explain this concept using simple words to a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 15-year-old? Now, some of my students take this really too literally. They tell me that they don't have a 5-year-old brother, so they can't use this method. But the crux of this method is that you need to be able to explain this new concept you're learning using no jargon to someone that doesn't study your topic. Now, using simple analogies to help them understand. You then need to use bigger words to explain to classmates that's studying your course so you can actually answer the question in the exam. Now, once you can truly explain this with your own words and be challenged by questions from your friends, you don't need spaced repetition that much. Your knowledge will still be here 3 months away even when your exam time comes. Now, for example, instead of memorizing a definition of lung condition called asthma, though asthma is a multifactorial chronic inflammatory disorder of the airways characterized by variable and reversible obstruction, bronchial hyperresponsiveness, and recurrent respiratory symptoms resulting from complex interactions between immunological, genetic, and environmental factors. Now, you can keep rote learning this and keep beating your brain to submission, or you can choose to deeply understand this and explain it in just simple words. So when someone has asthma, their tubes that carry air inside and out of the lungs can get swollen and narrow, making it hard for them to breathe. It's like when you're breathing, it can feel like you're trying to breathe through a straw, which can be scary. But with the help of medicines and sometimes avoiding certain triggers like dust or smoke, people with asthma can keep their lungs healthy and breathe better. Now, I even combined your knowledge of what can set off asthma, all explained in simple words. That's the power of the 5-10-15 rule. Next is weekly focused study group. Everyone teaches a topic and grills each other on the topic taught. It's really building on the previous 5-10-15 rule, so you practice that to teach other people without any resources. Now, you have to research it very well to understand a medical condition well. No social chatter or phones allowed during the study group. Now, this creates a fun way to have accountability and desire to learn because you don't want to look stupid in front of your friends. It also makes you think hard about this topic because you're anticipating all aspects of the topic that could be asked during the session. Now, this is another extremely productive use of time with the use of active learning, leverage, and accountability. Now on to exam efficiency. Exam efficiency really consists of knowledge retained and exam performance. When I was a burnt out A student, my knowledge retained was really poor. That's why I had to go through the same material over and over again. Now that was very inefficient and very bad for my mental health. My overall knowledge retained was very low because my mindset was poor, my study methods were poor, but compensated by my high action score studying 16 hours a day. So just for comparison's sakes, my knowledge retained was at about level 20. So when I was an efficient A student in med school, I focused on deep understanding until I can explain this simply to a 5-year-old using multiple analogies and explaining the concept back to front. Then I can apply and be challenged by all these smart cookies in my study group and form very strong neural connection. My overall knowledge retained was high because my mindset was good, my study methods were efficient, so I needed to study much less. But I can still achieve top 10% in a course that's 10 times harder than pharmacy. Now this isn't because I was studying any harder, but my efficiency and knowledge retained is now at a level 400, which is 20 times higher in med school compared to pharmacy school. Now retaining knowledge well is only one part of the equation, because when you think about it, what really are most closed book exams? It's really testing your ability to recall information from your brain, which is knowledge retained, and putting that onto a piece of paper using the right keywords and phrases to get marks. That's really it. So if you have issues with retaining knowledge because of a poor mindset, poor study methods, or lack of action, then you have no knowledge to recall at all. Now if you have good knowledge, but if you struggle with exam stress, fear, anxiety, you don't do well in exams. Just like if you don't prioritize important fundamentals such as sleep, a good diet, and exercise, your body will only be at 20% of its potential because you decided to run a practice marathon the night before the actual marathon race. These all sound really basic stuff, but your sleep and health all needs to be a priority to optimize if you really want to do well in exams. Now then, of course, your exam techniques come into play. If you keep on running out of time in your exams, you don't get to showcase all the hard work you've put into learning the material. Now if you keep on making these silly mistakes and keep putting down these wrong answers, you can still have all the knowledge in the world, but you can still do poorly in exams because it doesn't translate to all the keywords that they wanted. This is why we need to be conscious of all the principles and sub-principles that we've talked about. And you need to ask yourself, what is the next best thing that I could improve on? If you keep asking the right questions, the answers will indeed show up. Now I hope you can start to see it's not one study techniques that saves you, it's the whole system, which leads to principle 9, which is feedback loops and compounding time effects. Now imagine you and your friends are in a race. You run really fast and get ahead of everyone, but here's the twist. Everyone is also getting faster at the same time. So even though you're running faster than before, you still need to keep running very fast just to stay where you are. So in the book version of Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, there's a character called the Red Queen that tells Alice about this idea. Now she says, now, here, you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. It's like a never-ending race where everyone has to keep trying the best just to stay at the same level. That's what we call the Red Queen effect. Now, just like when everyone around you knows about active recall and spaced repetition technique, you need to have even better systems like the things we've mentioned in this video to stay ahead. So that's why you need to start applying quickly and earlier than when other people find out about this video. So doing active recall and spaced repetition then becomes the new minimum standard because everyone knows about this already. The Red Queen effect sounds very exhausting, but if you apply the principle of leverage and this principle of feedback loops and compounding time effects, you'll continue to stay ahead using a really comfortable pace. It's like when other people are pedaling as fast as they can with a bike, but you are cruising in your Ferrari. Your focus on developing more efficient methods always wins by miles. Now there's really only one rule with the compounding time effect. You can either compound up or compound down in life. You never remain in one place in life because when you try to do nothing and stay where you are actually going backwards. Now when you stay where you are, your self-confidence decreases. Now you have more anxiety that you're not keeping up with the rest of the crowd. You keep setting goals, but you keep procrastinating, so you have even more self-doubt. And the loop continues. But on the other hand, when you keep improving and using more efficient methods, you get better results. This motivates you to keep on improving on your mindset, methods, and you end up cruising in the Ferrari instead of struggling in your rusty bike. Now what you get is a self-feeding, never-ending feedback loop. The ones who struggle even more. The ones who do well do even better. And you can see how this amplifies even more when it comes to wealth. The poor get stuck in the 9 to 5 and getting second jobs and trading the time for money. They have no time to improve on themselves and working on an efficient system with high earning skills to get unstuck. And the rich keeps on regaining their time and leverage other people's time to do even more work for them so they do even better, and the loop continues. So you need to be consciously be aware of the Red Queen effect to keep on improving and become more efficient, because then this forms a feedback loop to either compound exponentially up or it drags your life exponentially down. Just like when I was a D student, everything I did was inefficient. So I had poor results, which kept me in a loop of failure. And this is the chicken and egg problem I told you earlier in Principle 4, which was identity. I had a D student identity, so I continued to take my D student actions. Then my D student actions gave me D student results. So then my D student identity became even stronger. So how do you break out of this loop? Now this comes to the bonus principle, which answers everything. Now all principles so far are really important, but this principle overrides it all. This point is really the most important point I'm trying to make. If you're sharp-minded, there is really only one principle. All the other principles come downstream from this. And if this one principle is done well, everything else falls into place automatically. And remember what caused me to jumpstart my desire and change my mindset from a D to B student in high school? I remember what changed me from a burnt out A student in pharmacy to a happy A student in medical school. This one principle changed my whole life. It is community. The right community ignites your desire to get out of a rut and start going for your dream. The right community strengthens your mindset and pushes you to find efficient ways to take massive action. Then you start seeing positive results. You start to believe even more in yourself. You start to take massive action and build an unstoppable momentum. Now this forms a feedback loop and compounds upwards like crazy. It no longer becomes a problem of if you will succeed. It's a matter of when you will succeed. Success becomes inevitable. The real question is, who are you surrounded by?